And we are live. Welcome, everybody, to Weather Center Live. It is Wednesday, January 24th, 2024, for that matter. It's definitely been a very much so a whirlwind of the last couple of days. It's been very busy here in and out of the Weather Center, but we're going to talk some weather tonight. It's very weird saying talk weather as opposed to talk tropics. We're going to be there soon with as fast as time is moving. We're going to be talking tropics here very soon, especially considering January is just about come and gone. Tonight we have quite a busy pattern to discuss, and I'm going to do a lot better of a job than I did on Monday night. I'm actually gassing up on some last-minute coffee, last-minute caffeine to make sure that I'm firing on all cylinders before we wrap up the night here in the Nazario residence. Quite an active pattern out there, and it is expected to get even more active as we roll through the beginning of February, which leads me to believe that we're going to have at least one more winter outbreak across the United States. Whether or not we see an actual Arctic outbreak remains to be seen, but I'm definitely seeing some of those colder thicknesses that have retreated up over the northern Canadian provinces come back down through the four corners of Central Rockies and then down across the Great Plains as well. So we're going to talk about that big time. Well, say hello to some folks. Sam Mastapasta, welcome in. Mick and Marley, I hope all is well for you as well. I noticed that you mentioned you're not really up for chatting. It's still a pleasure to have you joining us this evening. Matt F150, what's going on? Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Zenful, hello there, madam. Sharon, hello. PM, as a matter of fact, I did. I've been seeing that trending on TikTok and other posts on Instagram. The Marshall Islands got blasted by a rogue wave. There's been a lot of reports coming out of there that it was an army base out in the Marshall Island location that got hit real bad by a rogue wave. Easily 4 to 6 feet worth of, you could call it surge, almost like a tsunami effect that went ashore over those Marshall Islands out there. Very catastrophic scenario for them that played out, unfortunately. But by the way, PM, welcome in. Ethan's Life, good to see you. Shelly, thank you very much for joining us. How close are we? Welcome, thank you for joining us. So on top of what I'm noticing going on out there right now, it definitely does look to be that we're going to see the pattern really amp up as we roll into the beginning of February, and we'll talk about that here momentarily. We're going to start on the infrared satellite shot and kind of discuss exactly what the big picture weather pattern looks like. And right out of the gate, two prominent features that you probably notice is another gigantic cut-off barotropic system slowly trudging its way towards the southwest quadrant of British Columbia, the Pacific Northwest of Washington, Oregon. And then we have a very, very, very robust subtropical polar front combination going on across the south that is literally just ripping not only Pacific Ocean moisture, but also Gulf of Mexico moisture, remnant moisture out there up and through the Gulf Coast states, up into the mid-Atlantic region, the Appalachians, the Ohio-Mississippi Valley, and all the way up to as far north as the Northeast. And it's very interesting, too, because if you notice, a lot of this energy comes in way of our polar front jet. The polar front jet is helping to kick this trough axis onshore, and it continues through the desert southwest before finally ridging back to the north over the eastern half of the United States, and that's exactly why it's been very warm here in the southeast. In fact, it was a night and day difference, particularly this morning, which means, not to sound, but we were right on the money in terms of forecasting when our high temps were really going to surge. And I'd mentioned during a couple of my talk updates, not only on Sunday and Monday, that by Wednesday and especially Thursday, we were going to be starting the day with our low temps feeling like our high temps from last week and over this past weekend. And you can see that we also have a little bit of our subtropical ridging going on over the Central American Peninsula, the Yucatan Peninsula through the Yucatan Channel over Central Florida. That's also helping to give us just a little bit more warm air advection. So a very amplified pattern, and our Arctic jet is still up to the north. You can see how it has retreated fully up over James, Hudson Bay, the very extreme most northern Canadian provinces, and exiting back off the coastline with another baroclinic leaf feature right here, it looks like, supported by the northern branch of the Midas 40 isotherm jet up there in the upper latitudes. This has been the talk of the town. I think we had one tornado-warned storm that was rolling its way through central South Mississippi. I didn't get eyes on the actual warning. I just heard about it. There were a few folks who had mentioned on TikTok as well that it had been raining and raining and raining for almost at least 24 hours consistently down in Mississippi, and there are flash floods ongoing. There were a multitude of flash flood warnings that were ongoing down in Louisiana, eastern Texas, probably affecting Mississippi and especially Alabama now. with what looks like Arkansas, Tennessee, also getting in on this little bit of rainfall action. But a lot of the stuff has once again been confined to the Gulf Coast. Very robust setup right there, very aggressive and amplified setup. It's a stagnant setup. We're almost in a residual blocking pattern because this trough here is not really going anywhere, and this ridge that continues to attempt to build over the eastern seaboard, the western Atlantic, is helping to slow the pattern down dramatically. This is our ridge axes here, and then we have our trough helping to shotgun lows out of the desert southwest. There's a weak perturbation right here, and we are anticipating a very, very weak but organized low pressure system to form up just out ahead of that. And when I say shotgun, it's literally just going to blast off up towards the Midwest. And naturally, it wouldn't be the weather sphere if we didn't hype it up. And low-key, I've unsubscribed from the people who don't deserve a subscription from me. I feel bad for saying that. I have unrecommended, or I have turned off recommendations and notifications for certain channels because I'm just fed up of the hype sphere. You know, I mean, we have all this ongoing over the Gulf Coast, the upper Gulf of Mexico, the southeast quadrant of the U.S., and somehow we're still able to talk big-time massive snow for the Northeast. It's like, guys, shut up already. Honestly, this is what our radar looks like currently, and this tells the story perfectly. We still have a tremendous amount of training rainfall down across Houston, trying to get up towards the Dallas, Texas area. Mike is not in here tonight, it doesn't look like, but I can definitely get his testimony as to whether or not New Orleans themselves have been seeing a lot of this very rigorous onshore flow. Central Louisiana, interior Louisiana has definitely been blasted by a lot of this rainfall. Mississippi and now Alabama are getting it, so we're still right on track in terms of our forecast. This is all rainfall at this point. It's very interesting that this was once an area afflicted heavily by lots and lots of snowfall, lots of icing. They just had that ice storm event go through not only from down in this general quadrant of the U.S., but transition all the way up and out. And now they're being inundated by rainfall. It's pretty incredible, honestly, how the weather has just evolved the way that it has. My youngest daughter will be 3 on Valentine's Day. Well, happy early birthday to her. Def washing everyone out to the west of me. Sam Asta Pasta. I'm so... it's unfortunate to hear, unfortunately. This is going to be an extended event, too. We're not done with it yet. It's still going to persist for at least another 24 to 48 hours. That is for sure. Tyler Town had a NATO warning earlier today. There we go. So that's the one we were talking about just a little bit ago. Southwest California and western Washington. What about those areas? Can you tell me if the weekend storm will hit Toronto or not? Toronto, which Toronto, Mr. Snow Gaming, are you talking about? Because I believe there's a few of them. Greetings from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. Welcome in, Tourbus Ronnie. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a long time since I've seen folks joining us from Canada. I think, honestly, the last time we had some Canadian folks joining the live streams was Hurricane Lee, ironically. That was the last time we had some folks from the Brunswick, Nova Scotia area joining in, so it's nice to see somebody else tuning back in because this is going to play a role in your weather as we go over the next 3 to 4 days. And no, Wilhelm, we'll go ahead, and if you want to drop that information in the chat, I can pull it up. I'll pull up one extra tab. Oh, okay, that's what I kind of figured. Toronto, Canada, okay. So it is going to make its way up there, that's for sure. You guys are still going to see the cold temps and these clipper systems to the north that are going to continue to drop snow all through this general area. This is going to be the one particular quadrant of the lower 48 and parts of Canada where we're going to continue to see a consistent slew of winter storm, winter conditions, very cold temperatures. The rest of the United States, especially down the further south you go, especially from this point and down south, we're going to be very mild, very wet. And we'll get into exactly why that is here in a moment. This is a new interactive map that I actually found on WPC playing around with it earlier today. This is our 3 to 7 day range in terms of what our outlooks and our hazards are looking like. We have our heavy rain threat, that atmospheric river setup for Western California, Northern California, the Bay Area, parts of Oregon. Washington State is also seeing a threat for heavy rain over the next couple of days. We have our flooding possible. I think this needs to be adjusted because this is definitely ongoing. In fact, I've been seeing videos of total roadways submerged and cars being bogged down and hydro-locking on certain drivers out there in Louisiana, and this is likely going to persist for another 24 hours at the minimum. So honestly, roads are just about fully impassable out for that area. And then this is also something I want to talk about. And how close are we? And I were talking back and forth on Instagram once again, mentioning that there is a 15% threshold already highlighted on day 4 on Storm Prediction Center's chart for a severe weather event for Alabama and parts of Georgia. And this is exactly going to segue us into the next part of the brief. If I'm not mistaken, I got to pull up my OBS real quick and turn the map over just a little bit. There we go. This way you guys can actually see the rest of the United States. I'll go ahead and minimize. This is day 1, and they initially had us for a slight risk. They had us in a slight risk earlier today for, I believe, right in this general area, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not too sure exactly how I can go to the archive maps, but I know when I woke up this morning and did my TikTok update, there was an actual level 2 risk for parts of Louisiana and Mississippi. That has since washed out as we've gone through the back end of today, and it is not likely to make a return until maybe day 4. You can see when we go to the 4 to 8 outlook, there it is, that 15% threshold for Alabama, a large majority of Alabama and Georgia. So we'll take a look at those dynamics as well and see what's going on out there. Matthew F-150, the weather has been very crazy. It has been very crazy, honestly. I mean, it hasn't been anything catastrophic. I mean, unfortunately, outside of the folks who are dealing with this flash flooding event, that is a textbook El Nino setup. I mean, if I go back to the satellite, this is El Nino spraying us in the face, literally a fire hose effect coming on the coastline of the Louisiana-Mississippi coastline, impacting the eastern segments of Texas. This is El Nino, a bona fide El Nino setup, regardless of the intensity or the strength or anything like that. I don't know why my tablet keeps on making noise. It's weird. I don't know if it's notifications or something like that. But this, in my honest opinion, I have it written down in my notes. I've been going crazy with my notes, guys. And if there's one thing I can tell you before we get too deep into the live stream, is I do need to apologize. I need to sincerely apologize to the few of you who are in here, because I've definitely been slacking hardcore on my YouTube coverage. I've been fixated on TikTok and trying to get my other social medias up and running, and we're doing okay, but I've definitely been slacking in terms of my YouTube channel, and I do apologize for that. And there's no mistakes or anything like that. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason as to why. It's just been very chaotic in the background. Lots of things happening in the personal life. We've left tropical season, and I want to sincerely apologize to my longtime viewers, because I know my content has been slacking. I'm not nearly as routine with my updates on here, whether it be the live streams or my actual Weather Center segments. They've been all over the place as well. I know Mr. Florida Man Brian, I'm not too sure if he's in here right now. He had even mentioned that he's missed a number of the live streams because I've been doing them at 6, 4, 7, and I'm trying to get back in the routine of doing them Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 p.m. This way you guys can come with me on a consistent schedule, and I'm genuinely trying to hash out exactly when it would be opportune to start putting out my actual physical segments for the channel itself, because right now, unfortunately, the way I used to do it, it would not work. It would not work. My actual work schedule has been very busy. We're getting ready to expand the region that we support in Advent Health, so it's only going to get more busy. And my lunch break, I need that 30-minute lunch break to just decompress mentally. So unfortunately, I'm trying to work in the background and jot down a note, a schedule, if you will, on when I can properly record content and share it with you guys, and still promote the channel not only through live streams, because this has become very live stream dominant, and I don't really want it to be that way, because I know a lot of folks are not going to see the live streams since YouTube is not populating the channel anymore. So you guys are not forgotten. That is for dang certain. I'm not going to squander this YouTube channel anymore. We had very good momentum going for the hurricane season, and we're going to keep that routine going. There he is, Mr. Florida Brian, right there. Welcome in. Perfect timing. I was just talking about you. So yeah, before we continue on in the brief, I just wanted to extend that, professional courtesy to you guys. I do apologize. I have not been very, very rigorous on this YouTube channel, and it's a bummer. I feel bad, because I know we had a really good momentum, really good schedule going for a while. Ethan's Life, thank you very much for the $2 donation. I do appreciate it. Well, we'll have to see. We'll have to dissect it. There's a reason that they're putting on the severe thunderstorm risk. We'll have to take a look at it. This is what we were talking about on Monday, and we actually had a tornado-warned storm and lots of flash flooding. And in my opinion, that is definitely severe weather. Flash flooding comes alongside these severe thunderstorms with, I would assume, lots of wind that we've been seeing out there. I've been seeing a lot of special weather statements as well. And I would politely disagree. This is definitely a classic El Nino setup. We're getting a lot of rainfall in, supported by the jet, both jets, polar front, and the subtropical jet over the southeast. It's just not hitting Florida. It's not hitting Florida. It hasn't been hitting Florida almost all winter time, but this is still El Nino, and I'm willing to bet if we were to fast forward a full year out from today into January of 2025. That is so spooky to say, but if we were to fast forward and we stay in that Enzo cool or that weak La Nina, it's probably going to be very dry down here, very dry. We're probably going to see a night and day shift in our winter time next year as well. So I've been playing around with this. This is actually courtesy of Storm Prediction Center. They have their high-res ensembles and their short-range ensembles, and I've been meaning to look at this a lot more often because they actually do have some very good high-res tools here for some severe weather prediction. And you can see as that Jetmax rounds the base of the trough, this is that shotgun low that I was telling you guys on. When I say shotgun, it's going to move fast. So this is an hourly chart. This is going from 13 Zulu today out to 0Z tonight and into tomorrow. And you can see where that little weak Jetmax is right here, just to the south of Arizona, New Mexico, working its way over northern Mexico. And as it comes up and hits that ridge, it's going to fly out of that. It's going to fly out of the fly out of the base of the trough and move right up into the Midwest as it weakens. And I love this chart because you can track it very well. This is where our Jetmax is currently, and it's going to shoot up and ridge to the north very quickly. And it's not going to have very much time to undergo very, very strong or rapid cyclogenesis. You can see that it is primarily short wave as opposed to long wave supported. It's got a little bit of a nice Jetmax associated with it at 500 and 300 millibars, and it's going to rapidly exit our AOR here in the southeast and move up towards the northeast and the Midwest Great Lakes region just in time for our next little area of jet energy right in through here, this Jetmax at 500 millibars, to enter the base of the trough and help to kick out yet another storm system that everyone, of course, has been hyping up. They're talking about how this is going to... I don't understand it. I definitely don't understand it. They're getting very, very boisterous with how like these storms, in all intents and purposes, are not nearly as bad as we have seen earlier in the season, but they're putting the same amount of effort into it. They're putting the same amount of energy into it. This is bad. This is going to get worse. And, it's like, just stop, please. So, anyways, this is what we have going on right now. We have a very, very, very diffuse jet out there. Let me go back to OBS, make sure you guys can see it. Let me move this up just a little bit. There we go. We're looking at our North America AOY here so you guys can see what the long wave pattern looks like. And as I mentioned on the satellite, we once again hit the nail right on the head. Here's our Arctic jet stream well to the north. It is definitely present and available up over the Canadian territories, moving through Hudson Bay, James Bay area. Here is a split branch of our polar front jet, looking all sorts of ragged and weird out there. Here's our main branch of the polar front jet merged in with our subtropical jet, and then here's our lower latitude El Nino jet still screaming up and out of the south. So we have a very, for all intents and purposes, pardon my language, but this is a CF of a chart. This is an analyst's nightmare, as we like to call it, because there's fronts everywhere, and they're weak. They're not exactly very strong. As we take this through time, though, if you look off the west coast as that atmospheric river begins to set up, we have a very, very, very interesting phenomena going on right now. We have split flow working its way up towards the Pacific Northwest and British Columbia. That's also going to help to pump in more of that moisture. But look at very, very strong jet energy just off to the south of it, while we still have breakaway polar front jet energy in our subtropical jet over the south. So we do have a decent shot for some potential severe weather. It's not a big one, and when I say decent, I don't mean like this is something we really need to start reporting on, but the dynamics are there for a stray severe thunderstorm, if not damaging wind event, straight line wind event, out of the cells that bloom up along the polar side or the poleward side of this trough moving across the eastern half of the U.S. But again, as we go forward and forward and forward in time, look at how our jet is just ripped in half. This is still an analyst or an analysis nightmare. We have ridging going on over British Columbia, and then we have troughing immediately down to the south. We have an entirely split polar front jet, and that's exactly why it's going to remain warm over the United States for quite a period of time, because our northern branch of the polar front jet, which is very weird of me to say, is ridging up through the eastern or the western Canadian territories of British Columbia, Alberta, Manitoba, but then the southern extremity of it is all the way down tapping into our subtropical jet, and that's why you can see it really picking up steam as it moves across the Gulf of Mexico, southern Texas, and then re-interacting where the jet comes back together again over the mid-Atlantic states. So this is just... it's disgusting, if you ask me. It's ridiculous. I would not want to analyze the charts for this pattern. I can only imagine this is going to be a blocking pattern for sure. Sharp amplitude ridge going to stall out the pattern. And whenever we have a very, very meridional pattern like this, there's always something just upstream that's really going to throw us into chaos. So as I go way out towards the back end of the loop, notice how with this very, very amplified ridge, we have our deepening long wave trough just upstream of that. That's really going to bomb out over the eastern half of the U.S. with multiple embedded perturbations, as we like to call them, shortwave troughs, wrapped up in the cold sector of this polar front jet. And look at how ridiculous our low-latitude jet becomes. That's why I'm saying this is going to be our last final hoorah of El Nino. El Nino is going to pump the gas, and it's going to go crazy for at least a little bit longer as we get into February. And the GFS definitely is in line with this as well. I'll pull up the GFS real quick so you guys can see it. Obviously, we don't want to go too far out and take it for what it is, especially on the continuity runs of 6 and 18 Zulu, but this is still going to give us the big picture of it. If you look, right at about the 240-hour mark, the GFS is in line with what our Euro is thinking, as well as the Canadian model. I'll pull that up as well. And like I said, we're not looking at an Arctic outbreak, although... mark my words, and I'm willing to put every penny that I've earned from this channel on that bet. Mark my words, as soon as this starts to happen, or if this trends and we get closer to just after my birthday, the weekend of my birthday actually, February 2nd, 3rd, and into the 4th, once we start to see this unfold, I know for dang certain everybody's going to say, ooh, Arctic's coming back, and I'm going to be here to say, you're wrong, and you should quit YouTube because that's not Arctic air. Our Arctic air is still well to the north, and in fact, we have very, very intense warm air advection occurring over the heart of the United States, which is why I do think we'll have to watch this setup particularly because of the temperature discontinuity and the jet activity we have coming on shore. If you look, our thicknesses almost look spring-like at this point. Here's our freezing line in our polar air with our 522 line, the actual bona fide marker for our polar air, right up in through here, and look at where our 564 and our 570 line is. Our 564 line is all the way up there, and our 570 line actually has a bit of a thermally induced low forming up on the lee of the Rockies in New Mexico and Colorado. So our 570 subtropical air is trying to make it up as far north as just above the Texas-Oklahoma panhandle. So that's an incredible line of temperature discontinuity. That is a very significant warm front or warm sector that's trying to form up. And in fact, it looks like the isobars here are hinting at a warm front already forming up over the Dakotas into Minnesota, it looks like. And I bet if we were to transition over to our temperature advection, there you go. We have warm air advection occurring as far north as North Dakota, Minnesota, trying to push across the Canadian border. So that is a very expansive setup, and again, take this with an enormous grain of salt. The key takeaway here is we could possibly have a very, very big storm system forming up. Do I think it's going to look exactly like this? No, we're probably going to have multiple iterations of this. That is for dang certain. This is going to change and change and change. And if I go back to 12 Zulu at the same time, you can see big difference already, a marked difference, and I actually trust this iteration of the GFS a little bit more. I definitely trust this iteration a little bit more. It just makes sense thermodynamically with our jet support up at the upper levels and boiling it down to the surface and stacking it with our 1,000 to 500 thicknesses. We come back over here to weathermodels.com and I pull up the United States AOI and we go to 1,000 to 500 thickness and we go back to 12 Zulu and we go forward in time. The thickness lines match up perfectly with where I do anticipate we could see cyclogenesis. So as you can see, our Arctic air is way up here still. We have very little Arctic air on this map. In fact, it looks like eastern Quebec, maybe down as far south as New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, could feel a little bit of that residual Arctic air mass. But in terms of the United States, we're going to be warm. Look at this gigantic ridge out in through here. I mean, it's not going to be warm, and I don't want anyone to misconstrue that. We're not going to be sitting in 80, 90-degree weather, but it's going to be markedly warmer, noticeably warmer than what it was, for instance, when the Arctic air itself was actually across much of the U.S. That was when we were waking up in the 20s, the 30s, or the teens, the further north you went from the Gulf Coast, the southeast. Now we're going to be seeing more periods of a mild winter. We're going to start the day here in Florida, for example, with maybe 40s, 50s, and then warm up to the 70s, and it's t-shirt and short weather by the time it's lunchtime and you're on your day off and you want to go outside and do something. Excellent fishing weather, too, which I'm very excited about. I've been craving a fishing trip here very soon. Samasta Pasta, I saw your comment. Birthday is February 1st. It's on a Thursday this year. The Dirty 30. Turning 30. Might do a birthday live stream. I might not, but I'm turning 30. Entering a new decade. Maybe that's symbolic of what's going to happen with this hurricane season. Entering a new decade of life. Lord willing, it's a fruitful one. And maybe with this new decade of life, it's going to be a historical hurricane season. We'll talk about that at the very tail end of the stream. So this is what I have on my radar, though, guys. That's the big one I definitely want us to pay close attention to, because as you can see, even though we're in La La Land of the GFS, we have a very good amount of jet energy, cold air trying to break down to the south with lots of good warm air advection occurring over the south. So this is a textbook setup for some severe weather action. We'll probably see the trademark highlights go out if this does hold true for the southeast, probably not the Florida Peninsula. It'll probably stay up over the Panhandle. Hardest areas hit will probably be right up along the coastline, but it'll be very interesting to see how far to the north this one actually extends, because we're going to be under a ridge and under a modified tropical / very modified polar ridge for an extended period of time. We're not going to have cold air push after cold air push like we have before. We're going to be able to marinate under that warmer weather for a little bit more time, so we might see a bit more of our Cape come up and move further inland than we have. And as a matter of fact, yeah, if you look at this, ML Cape is not too brilliant, not too spectacular, but naturally we don't want to take this with a whole lot of faith or confidence, but you can already see where that low undergoes cyclogenesis or develops. We actually have our Cape and our instability extending. Let me change the color so you can see it. We have our Cape and instability extending all the way up into the Ohio, Mississippi valleys and through the Appalachians and the Mid-Atlantic states, whereas right now what we're used to is kind of just seeing stuff like this. So, can you show us the Cape Serve weather for Saturday? Do you think it's going to be a big day? I'm not too sure exactly if Saturday is going to be a big day, but we can go ahead and dissect that a little bit. I just wanted to show you guys what's long range on my radar for the time being. And as a matter of fact, let's go back to SPC, see if we can look at some of the Cape and buoyancy on here. We're going to take advantage of their Schref model, and we'll step through the product. This is going to be if we have instability of 500 joules per kilogram or higher, and it actually looks like, wow, according to the Schref, we're going to have some pretty decent Cape in place tomorrow afternoon over Alabama and Georgia. That's very interesting. This is Thursday, Friday, and then as we go into Saturday, yeah, look at that. So there's Friday and into Saturday, you can see that blossoming of Cape before that front can finally move its way through over those areas already highlighted by Storm Prediction Center. That's pretty good, pretty sporty, pretty decent. Let me see what the surface lifted index looks like, if the lifted index will support severe weather. Yeah, so I mean, lifted indexes are going to definitely be where they need to be for a stray severe thunderstorm. More than likely a severe wind event or a moderate wind event at best. I really don't think we're going to see a torrential amount of severe weather associated with this, but we'll have to see. To be determined. What does the NAM show? The 3-kilometer NAM as we go into the weekend. This is Thursday. There's Friday. Some random pockets of leftover residual moisture. Look at that low spinning over Oklahoma and Kansas. Just barely missed the mark on Saturday. We'll go back to the 12-kilometer NAM, and we'll see this is Saturday going into Sunday. I mean, for what Storm Prediction Center is hunting for on the 4th, let me make sure I'm reading the right day. So, yeah, Saturday, 12 Zulu into Sunday. It looks like Storm Prediction Center might just be reaching a little bit. We'll have to see exactly what shakes out. We could get a little bit of thunderstorm activity on the leading edge of this weak frontal boundary that's right in through here. You are going to be in the warm sector of it, and that's where they're thinking we could see some possible isolated severe threats. More than likely going to be a wind event, that's for sure. Let's take a look at a skew T sounding for that general area, and we'll see. Oh, we don't get NAM skew Ts, do we? I thought we did. Let me go back to the Euro. Yeah, Euro looks a little more impressive, so maybe we will see some action out there. Gosh, once again, we have more conditional soundings, more conditional instability, and I'm getting sick and tired of conditional instability because that gets us into trouble almost every single time. We go talking about a serious event, and then it ends up being super conditionally unstable, and it wanders back into stable land, and then we bust, and everyone's like, you don't know what you're talking about. But, I mean, there's definitely enough to get some stray stuff going. And, again, to support my wind hypothesis, there's definitely plenty of D-cape or downward cape to give us some convective winds off of this, especially as we get into the main event and that dry air intrusion tries to come through. You can see that we get as high as 438 joules per kilogram of D-cape, which is definitely enough to give us 30-35 knots out of those storms, especially if we get good rainfall out of those downdrafts. So, not a very, very intense setup, that's for sure. Looks like light rain. I don't know about light, unless you're talking about Florida. If you're talking about Florida, then yeah, maybe light rain at the best, but I definitely do not think we're just going to see light rain as this system transitions through the rest of the southeast. That is for certain. In fact, let's go over to some of our other models and let's take a look at our rain totals. We'll go to the NDFD, we'll go to Southeast US, and let's go to total precip, and let's see what we're looking at. Yeah, see, so we're still going to be seeing some really good rainfall out of this training event, and this is Sunday. This is Saturday night as we roll into Sunday very early morning. This is 7 p.m. Saturday, and you can see this is our corridor, very heavy rainfall, that's for sure. This area has already been seeing lots of heavy rain. I think these numbers are a little under forecasted. That's for certain. I think we've been seeing a little bit more accumulation. I don't think 2 inches of rainfall, 2.3, 2.3, 2.8 inches of rainfall is really going to give us some of the submerged roadways that I've been seeing on social media popping up. See what the NSSL is thinking. NSSL does look a lot more reliable, a lot more accurate, that's for sure. 5.6, 4.3, 3.1. I think this is initializing a lot better with some stray, heavier pockets of thunderstorm activity for the Big Bend area of Florida, even it looks like, with that return flow. Some parts of Georgia, South Carolina getting it. The eastern, I should say the western extremity of Alabama, and the northern half of it's going to get some pretty good rainfall. But unfortunately for us here in Florida, at least particularly the peninsula, which again, I really think this is a sign. I think this is a sign Mother Nature is like, you guys, you got to wait your turn. You got to wait your turn, because when the rain comes for Florida itself, it's going to be too much all at once, and you're going to wish you hadn't been hoping for rain as much as you are. I don't see an indication of severe weather. I definitely see an indication of severe weather for sure. Like I said, I think convective winds are going to be our number one issue here. Looking at D-cape, looking at the soundings, looking at the little bit of dry air that we have mixing in with these storms. No tornadoes, that's for sure. I mean, of course, obviously, we can't rule out a stray funnel cloud or two because of our jet activity helping to provide us with that shear component. But I definitely do think we're going to have more winds and more potential flash flooding more than anything. Let's go over to the FV3, and then we'll transition to a longer run of the HRRR just to get an idea of what our simulated radar models are thinking. So here's FV3 for 12 Zulu. You can see there's our squall feature. What the heck? Where'd the rest of the model go? Why did it not? Is that just an issue with the... All right, I guess so. We're going to stop at 12 hours, and then we're going to jump to 49 hours. And there you go. It looks like as we roll into... So we can't see that far out. Possible stray thunderstorms moving through central Georgia into South Carolina. Can't see as far out as Saturday, though, unfortunately, where the SPC is thinking that we could see a isolated severe risk. We'll do one last look at our simulated reflectivity a la the HRRR, especially as our 0Z model comes in, and you can see lots of really good embedded cells along that squall line. It actually looks like the HRRR is going gung-ho with a lot of these storms, trying to bring some storms actually into central Florida, too. Look at that. That's very interesting. Is it doable? 100%. Yeah, if we actually get the cloud cover to get rid of itself, or we get the cloud cover to burn itself off, we could definitely see some stray isolated shower and storm activity here in Florida. What does our supercell composite look like? Yeah, all right. So, I mean, there's some supercell parameters coming together in Alabama and Georgia, so I guess there is going to be that bit of a rotational factor to these storms. Let's see. Do we actually have a shear model on here, or is it just the helicity? I guess we'll use the helicity. Yeah, look at that. I mean, there's definitely some rotational possibilities out there is what I'll call it. Right up along that right along the leading edge of that weak squall feature. It's going to be much weaker than a lot of the fronts we've seen, that's for sure. Amanda Kirby, thank you very much for the $2 donation. I definitely appreciate that. Those little storms went right over my county. Did they really? So yeah, that's what we're looking at as we go over the next couple of days. Let me go back to 18Z so we can look just a little bit further out. I think this model's going to stop at 48 hours, yeah. And then it looks like look at that, wow. Nice little surge of helicity probabilities just off the coastline there. What does our simulated reflectivity look like as we get all the way out? Oh, yeah, look at that. That's very interesting to see. We'll have to look and see exactly what that is. Nice little sudden resurgence, maybe some extra jet energy or a shortwave moving through the upper levels that's going to help to ignite another bow echo-looking line echo wave pattern, a loop right along the the leading edge of the frontal system as it tries to get going. Or maybe that's a part of the stationary leftovers that are going to try to lift to the north. We'll have to see. I'm not going to go full synoptic analysis right now. But yeah, there you go. That's what we're watching for very closely. And then naturally, of course, just so we don't leave out our folks up there in the north, we're going to have to watch exactly how these systems transition up there because they're eventually going to run into the freezing line and we're going to get a little snow out of it. And it looks like based on the last several runs of the models for my folks up there in Canada, these systems want to move almost due east after a certain point because of the orientation of our ridge. With that ridge being in place, it's going to ride the apex of the ridge, just barely dodging a lot of this. As I mentioned, that Arctic air is still nestled in over eastern Canada, and that's going to prevent a lot of the major snowfall and impacts. You're going to have some weak clipper systems moving along that northern tier branch of the jet because we have such split flow. That's where we're going to have to watch for your snowfall up near Toronto and Ontario, and then for our folks out there in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, who are joining us, that's where your snowfall is going to come from. You have to watch up to your northwest and west-northwest as opposed to these systems, at least in the near-distant future over the United States. They're not really going to be a credible weather threat for you up there. Yeah, and you can see, even look at this. Look at this weird, we haven't seen this in a while. I thought this was very bizarre that we're actually seeing cyclogenesis off of that northern branch exploding over the northeast and then moving out over the Atlantic. You can see where that clipper comes in right in that northern branch of the polar front jet, kind of interacting with our Arctic boundary, and then it actually deepens over the northeast and moves off the coast. Very cool, very neat how that kind of transitioned itself. So this is going to be our next little nor'easter system. Everyone's already talking about how this is going to cause major problems. I don't think it's going to be major problems, that's for sure, because it's just not nearly as intense, not nearly as strong as the last few systems have been. You even look at the 18 Zulu Euro when we go back to 12Z, and you can see, I mean, the biggest threat, I believe, is going to be, and even that's a stretch just because it's not that cold. I would think maybe a wintry mix, and it looks like it tries to deepen pretty quickly as it gets off the coastline, so we could see some really good onshore flow rainfall, some light snow activity up in the northeast, but in comparison to what we've been seeing, the actual bombs that have been going through that area, these are definitely a lot more lackluster, which is why I've turned my recommendations and stuff like that off. What do we have going on in the chat right now? Our state, we don't get flash flooding. That happens in the desert next to mountains. Hurricane season is coming up fast. I do agree with you there, Florida, Brian. We're going to talk about that here, especially since our last discussion really didn't go too well. I was so tired and very discombobulated. So we do get flash floods in Florida. We definitely do. Flash floods, for those of you guys who don't know, when we say flash floods, it happens like this. That's the difference between flooding and flash flooding. And I've seen flash flooding out here, that's for sure. Water will pile up in lower lying areas very quickly, and before you know it, you're going to have multiple inches of water on top of each other, and that's when you get the standing water. That's when you get the mosquitoes, you get the West Nile and other viruses that end up running rampant in that local area, and it becomes miserable. They're not as frequent, not nearly as frequent, but we do have flash flood warnings that go out here in Central Florida. They're just not nearly as frequent because a lot of the state is already saturated with water. We're at sea level, so there's really not much of a difference for us there. But that's also why, especially for interior counties, it doesn't take a whole lot to get those piling up of water. And in fact, I've definitely seen around here, I'm getting a little leery that if we do get a major tropical cyclone, I'm going to be trapped where I live again. When Hurricane Ian came through in 2022, I can't believe it's been that long already. I wanted to say last year, but we're way past that now. It's going to be the 2-year anniversary this year. But anyways, when Ian came through back in 2022, we didn't have any damage, any major impacts. We didn't even lose power, thankfully. But my family and I were trapped on whatchamacallit. My family and I were trapped in Point Siena because the one-way road was literally under, I think, like 4 or 5 feet of water. Like, there was no way in heck we were getting through that at all. And it took at least 4 days before I could go back to work because the water would finally recede enough to where if you wanted to, you can hit the opposing traffic. If there's no one oncoming, you can hit the other side, the opposing traffic lane, and move around it if you kind of go up into the grass. It's kind of like a NASCAR raceway, the turn that I'm talking about. There was a huge thing of water there, and I'm starting to notice around here some of these lower-lying ditch areas and construction sites are already accumulating water, and all we've gotten out here were just the occasional thunderstorms, that squall line that came through. We saw that we only got heavy rain and some winds out of it, and there's definitely already water piling up, so I'm definitely nervous that we're going to have floods and areas submerged in the Haines City, Davenport, Point Siena area if we get another major tropical cyclone through here. But there you have it. That's going to be the end of that. So we're going to be tracking a few different entities on the horizon. If you go to like yesterday's runs, the storm was hitting Toronto. Can you check and see what has changed? It's just riding the ridge. That's the thing. It's just riding the ridge up there. If you come back to our 12Z yesterday, you can see that it wanted to jet up to the north, but it looks like we're anticipating, or the models are anticipating, that that ridge is going to stay more mid-amplitude in nature, and that's going to drive those storms not through the Midwest and the Great Lakes anymore, but just a little hair further to the east. So in reality, the biggest thing that we're going to have to watch for is not necessarily what our surface features do, which I don't see a lot of folks, mentioning that nearly as much as they probably should. We're going to have to watch the amplitude of our ridge. If we come back to today, notice how if I go to 12Z yesterday, a little bit of a stronger ridge. If I go to 12Z today, a little bit of a weaker ridge, more broad. I know it didn't seem like much, but it's more flat. Whereas yesterday, it looked like we were expecting a bit more sharper amplitude on its northernmost apex that could drive at least the cold area of that low up through southern parts of Ontario and Quebec. So we'll just have to see. We'll have to see if these little weak jet maxes at 500 to 300 millibars will actually help to give a little bit of extra oomph to drive those storms up towards your area, Mr. Snow Gaming, if that answers your question. We're still going to keep an eye on it. We have a couple days until we get there. I can't believe it's only Wednesday, so we'll know a little bit more as we go into the day late tomorrow and Friday. Oh, yeah, exactly, Mr. Snow. That's what I was saying. We'll have to see if these little weak impulses of jet energy help to bring up the amplitude of the pattern just a little bit more to get these systems to start moving further to the north. But right now with that broad, trying to strengthen into a mid-amplitude ridge, that's exactly how they're going to ride out. And it'll probably help if I switch this AOI a little bit further out and we go North America as opposed to just CONUS. There you go. Now you can see it a lot better. So that system's going to get shotgunned out of the Great Lakes. That system's going to get shot out of the Gulf coastline and then move like this over that very broad amplitude ridge, trying to build in. And if I take this through time, see, the model wants to flatten the ridge out. And I bet you 10-1 that's exactly why at 12 Zulu yesterday, yeah, see, difference. Big difference. It doesn't look like much looking at this zoomed out perspective, but you can see the ridge does not flatten out in this case. Whereas if I go to 12Z today, flat. It's flatlined at this point, like so. We don't really have a lot of amplitude with it, and that's exactly why we have the weak spot. Very similar to what we see with tropical cyclones, almost, if you will. It's riding that jet in between the weak spot between our Arctic air up over the north, these Arctic modified polar high pressures, and then our high pressure over the Atlantic Ocean. But yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on it. We'll see exactly what shakes out tomorrow and tomorrow night. What the heck? Ian only produced gale force winds and little rain. Are you like inside of a bubble? Because I'm only one county over from you, and this is where I have to say something, because I don't know where you are, if you're in like a dome, like that old show The Dome, and nothing happened, but we definitely had 60, 70 mile an hour winds in Poinciana. I was outside recording the whole time. We had flooding everywhere. Roads were underwater. I'm telling you, easily 3 to 5 feet of water, that's for sure. Everywhere. International Drive to the north of us, east of your location, if I'm not mistaken, was submerged completely. Roads were impassable. So I don't know how you saw very little rain and gale force winds. There were tropical storm force winds. I mean, I can understand much weaker where you are because Ian ended up moving further to the east. And we'll go ahead and use this opportunity to segue into our tropics discussion here. We'll pull up Ian's track because I know that at the last second, not Ian Summerholder, I know at the last second, Ian managed to jog even further to the east. Yeah, here we go. Perfect example right here. Ian managed to go even further to the east because initially when they finally revised that forecast track at the last second before it made landfall, Ian actually did move further east. It was initially forecasted to pull a Hurricane Charlie, ride that I-4 corridor, go right up through Orlando, bringing hurricane force winds to just about everybody. But we dodged a bullet. And honestly, outside of this portion of Florida, a lot of us got very, very lucky. A lot of us got extremely lucky. And I don't think a lot of people realize that with Hurricane Ian. If Ian had moved through at the same speed and the same vigor as Hurricane Charlie did in 2004, this probably would have been my more infamous storm that I talk about for many, 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 many years. But the fact that it moved so slowly and it actually moved a hair further to the east of a lot of us, we were put on the much weaker side. Still a dangerous side of the storm, but we were put on the much weaker side, the less aggressive side of the hurricane in terms of the quadrants. And a lot of us here in Central Florida didn't realize the full impacts of it. So, but the rain goes without saying. The rain dumped, that's for sure. And I'm not near Kissimmee. I try to stay away from Kissimmee. I'm about 45, 50 minutes away from Kissimmee. I had more rain in Nicole. Rain gauge doesn't lie. Well, and that's weird. I don't know. Because, I mean, like I said, I can't testify. You would know more than I would because you're in your local area. But if you look at the satellite loop, for example, Hurricane Ian dumped rain on everybody. We'll actually go into full commentator mode. All right, this is not what I wanted. There we go. This is nope, that's not what I wanted either. Let's back out. I just want the loop. I just want the time lapse. Is this the time lapse? Hurricane Ian was a very, very, very unprecedented storm, by the way. Hurricane Ian was not an anomaly, but a worst-case scenario for a lot of us here in Florida. And another missed forecast by the National Hurricane Center. And I'm sick and tired of National Hurricane Center being ridiculous with their intensity forecasts. Okay, nope, this is not what I wanted either. Let me see if there's anything in GIF land. Here we go. you could already see by this point in time, everybody was already getting very heavy rainfall. At this point in time, and this is right at landfall, everybody was already getting winds and everybody was already getting rain with Hurricane Ian. And you can see the dry air that was supposed to weaken the storm, and it didn't because of this core. The eye core was just so well defined. Look at that. The eye was so well defined that there was nothing intruding on that. But you can see a little bit of the dry air floating in around its northern side. And you can see we got a lot of rainfall, and that's only the early periphery of it. These squall lines, these feeder bands, there's one here, one there, one there, one there. Very healthy storm. This thing had a lot of exhaust and a lot of good breathing going on with it as it made landfall. So everybody, as it moved inland like this, that's kind of the track it took. I remember watching the eye. It was about, I think, 2 or 3 a.m. the following day after it made landfall. It was finally to the south of us in the Poinciana area. And you can just extrapolate this rainfall forward. Torrential rains. If you use just basic extrapolation, all this is going to move like so. It's going to move through, and everybody's going to see that heavy rainfall. So I don't know how you got worse. I mean, worse in Nicole than, whatchamacallit, than Hurricane Ian. But anyways, I digress. There were a lot of folks who saw really bad impacts with Hurricane Ian. And I'm noticing there's something else I've been exploring on Tropical Tidbits as we get into the last 10 minutes of the stream. Oh, yeah, I know Nicole. I was watching Nicole. Nicole was definitely an anomaly. Nicole was definitely a La Nina anomaly and formed up in November. Started out as a open wave and then turned into a subtropical, non-tropical setup and then ended up being a hurricane when it broke off and actually underwent that genesis from non-tropical to tropical. Very awesome situation or awesome setup. On the north edge of that map. Oh, well, then that's, I mean, I guess. Apples to oranges. Anyways. All right, here we go. This is what I've been looking at recently as well, and it's something that I have not glanced at yet, and I'm going to go ahead and throw that disclaimer out. We got to take this with a massive grain of salt because these are Climo models, but I noticed we actually have mean sea level pressure anomalies going forward, and I do not like what I'm seeing on some of these models. So this is for October, this is for September, and this is for August. August particularly is very concerning looking ahead. Because if you look at this is more of an Azores high, obviously, so we'll have to see exactly what shakes out. But what the model is trying to indicate is there could be a bit of an extension of this system. There could be a bit of an extension, and this is definitely a positive NAO. You can see the strong low pressure up to the north and then the strong high pressure down to the south. So we are at a positive NAO pattern for the month of August. And as you can see, this is where we have a concerning trend to worry about in the Gulf of Mexico, for the Bahamas, and for the Caribbean. Because you can see where our lower pressure anomalies are just driving stuff like so. Driving storms out and across. So I do think we want to amp up our preventative measures along the Gulf coastline, the Florida Panhandle, the east coast of Florida, and the Carolinas, and further to the south before we get into hurricane season. Because a lot of the models are starting to think that we are going to have more prominent steering features out there in the Atlantic. And take a look at this. The Canseps is going full in. This is Florida Gulf Coast landfalls for days. Very prominent Azores, Bermuda high, wandering around out there in the Atlantic with all of our steering currents just driving storms in like so. So that's definitely something we're going to have to monitor very closely. This is for August. This is for September. Trying to see a little bit of a break, moving more of an Azores setup. And then moving into October, November, and then December. Obviously, we close out the hurricane season, and you can see the pattern breaks down. But we'll have to see exactly what shakes out. And then I don't remember his name, unfortunately. He mentioned he was in for the Monday live stream, and he'd mentioned it, the PDO out over the Pacific. The PDO is looking very interesting as well, because if you look at the SST anomaly as we go through hurricane season, it looks like it wants to go from a negative where we sit right now to a positive At the same time, we have our La Nina. So it's going to be counteracting one another, which could definitely play a role in exactly what type of steering current we get over North America, and that's going to play a direct role into what occurs over the Atlantic. So lots of moving pieces, and I'm trying to slowly put the puzzle pieces together and get ahead of this before it's too late. And I already know once I start putting out more regular content, I'm going to start getting yelled at by a lot of people, but I'm going to start putting tropical updates out as early as May. I'm going to put a disclaimer out in maybe mid to late October as El Nino fully crashes and burns, and I'm just warning you guys now preemptively, or I'm giving you guys the heads up, warning others out there who may come across this live stream or content down the road. But I'm going to start pumping out tropical updates as early as May. I don't give a crap. If there's nothing out there, there's nothing out there, but history has proven to us that especially in more amplified setups, more favorable environments for the Atlantic hurricane season, we usually get, at the very minimum, one named storm mid to latter part of May. It's been happening time and time again. We looked at the 2020 hurricane season on Monday, and in 2020 we had 3 named storms in May. So this channel is going to go back to tropical mode as early as May 1st, and we're just going to start looking long range. That's the whole thing. We're going to start looking long range, and we'll start forecasting it out and seeing exactly what El Nino looks like. And I'll leave you guys with this. If you look, our El Nino is still crashing. We're getting ready to cross back into that moderate to approaching weak El Nino as we go forward in time in the 3-4 region. And all the other ones are doing the same thing. And you can see every single time I pull up the 7-day change, the Pacific is already cooling off. It's already cooling off, and we have our negative PDO out there right now. And I believe a negative NAO over the Atlantic. I haven't looked too heavily at that. I could be wrong, but we're going to have that completely flip around. And I think that's going to play against us as we go through time. And as you can see here, this is a greater example. You can see the warmer waters of the Northeast Pacific, and in the little horseshoe right here, the colder waters. So this is a negative PDO. And this looks like, just looking at sea surface anomalies, this could be a negative NAO over here as well. No, actually, I'm not going to try to forecast it. But anyways, that's what I'm going to leave you guys with. It's not looking too good for the hurricane season. Oh, yeah, how close are we? I agree. I think we're going to be there. We still have 7 more days of January. I do think we're going to be about at that +1 mark for our 3-4 index. And you could see here, looking at the Eastern Pacific, where's the sun? Here we go. Nope, that's not what I wanted either. Let's just go to the Pacific. Can I go to just the Pacific? Nope. All right, whatever. Anyways, we'll go back to the world. And as you guys can see here, Pacific waters are definitely cooling off, and they've been doing that on a consistent basis. And the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, the Atlantic are still very hot. Very, very hot. Everything is above average out there. And I didn't know this, but whatchamacallit, the PDO actually does impact how much warming we have across the globe. I didn't know that. I started researching the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, or Decadal, however you want to pronounce it. Actually influences the rate of global warming across the planet. So definitely something I'm going to do a lot more homework on and get myself very, very spun up on NAO, PDO, oscillations, La Nina, El Nino, favorable conditions, what the setup's going to look like. There's going to be a lot of research going on in the background before we get fully into the hurricane season and start putting out tropical updates. And it looks like the chat is falling apart. No, I'm not triggered because you just think you know it all, man, and you don't. For some reason, Nicole brought more rain than Ian where I am. That's how it is. No, you are triggered and you falsely assumed. All right, now we're cussing in the chat, too, and I'm not a fan of that. All right. We're going to have to end the live stream. This is getting out of control. Definitely getting out of control for some strange reason. Oh, no, I know some of you guys are still here, but I'm not a fan of what's going on in the chat. Not a fan at all. Mr. Snow Gaming, that's going to be tough, to tell you the truth. We won't have a better feel of that until we get closer to April, May, and then moving closer to, and I see your comment, I'm probably going to end up putting pause mode on just a little bit more, so this way we don't have spam going on. But honestly, truthfully, it's going to be a stretch. I don't think we're going to have any Sandies this year. I think our pattern is going to definitely support more Gulf Coast, Southeast, Caribbean landfalls. And I'm glad to see other channels are picking up on the direness of what this hurricane season could look like. It's good. It's good. We need to put the information out there. We need to start talking about it in advance because it's going to be a night and day difference. We had a moderate to a growing strong El Nino for this last hurricane season, and it kind of shut the tropics down. I know it didn't. We had a lot of named storms, and there was a lot of hype, but that's the problem. We had a lot of named storms, a lot of hype out there, and no one took it serious. And I'm afraid that because of how dramatic of an upside-down capsizing we're going to have with this hurricane season and potentially the one thereafter, it's not going to be taken as serious as it needs to be. And that's why, again, putting it out there, as soon as we hit May 1st, I'm going to be switching the channel back to the good old Hurricane Eye with the Weather Center intro, and we're going to start talking tropics, starting out on National Hurricane Center's homepage. And not literally starting out there, but you know what I mean. We're going to start doing tropical updates just to see exactly what unfolds, because some of our CANSIPS model data and CFS model data agree that we could see the tropics fire up a tad early this year. We'll go back to the CANSIPS model one last time, since I know we're going to get a new batch of CANSIPS model here in the next few days. As a matter of fact, when my birthday rolls in, we can do a live stream the following day and look at our new CANSIPS model data. But as you can see here, this is for January 1st. If you look at May already looks like our tropics are going to open their doors and we could possibly have an increase in moisture storm activity in the Caribbean. And then as you go through June, there you go. Tropical MDR is wide open. Caribbean is already seeing above average moisture. We already have above average moisture trying to sneak into Florida, so who the heck could tell us, honestly, you know? Arlene could have done some stuff this past year if El Nino didn't step on it as soon as she tried getting going. This time it's going to be a completely different flipped script. So if we do get another Arlene-style storm in the Gulf of Mexico, that's probably going to be bad. That's going to be real bad. Tropical storm, if not a low-end hurricane landfall as early as June. That would be crazy. If we do get a hurricane or let alone a named storm in May, if not June at the very latest, that does make landfall in comparison to what we saw last year, that's going to tell a hell of a lot about what's coming for sure. I don't think so. I don't think people will tune out. I know a lot of folks are going to come back when it comes to the tropics, especially my Caribbean viewers down there. There's a lot of folks in the Caribbean who are not watching as fervently right now, and I know they don't give a crap about election in the U.S. In fact, they're probably going to laugh at us the whole time. Florida West Coast is going to be a target, actually. It's the East Coast I'd be a little more leery. I'd say if I had to kind of split it in terms of what the hurricane season could look like, I'd say we're at a 70-30 split. Especially if we keep wandering more into La Nina territory, I would say West Coast Florida and the panhandle of Florida has to watch a little bit closer than the East Coast of Florida. Of course, I'm giving it that 70-30 ratio right now. There's a 30% chance that East Coast Florida will take a direct hit, just like we saw with Nicole, like we saw with Katrina, Andrew, like we saw with multiple storms. And I do believe that it's going to be West Coast of Florida and the Gulf Coast. Look at July. Look at August. Like, if you live from Texas all the way through here, you guys need to be, like, this is number one. This is going to be, this area here is going to be number two. And then up and through here where the green is, this is going to be number three. That's what I'm thinking. We're going to have to watch these areas very closely. Here, like so. These, I do believe, are going to be our hot spots for sure. I do think these are going to be the hot spots, especially in here. We're going to see some late bloomers out of the tropical MDR that are going to fire up and blow up as they pass through the Lesser Antilles, if not just barely scraping through to the north of our Leeward Islands. Puerto Rico, you're going to have to be on alert. British Virgin Islands, U.S. Virgin Islands, you're going to have to watch. Bahamas, you're going to have your eyes open this year. I'm calling it. Those are going to be our 2 hot spots we're really going to have to look at closely. Anything that wanders through there, especially in a weak La Nina to a moderate La Nina, is going to have perfect environmental conditions outside of the possible dry air. We're going to have to watch very closely. Very closely. Mr. Florida Brian, I actually do not think that the Bay of Campeche is going to be a hot spot like we saw this year. This year we had some stuff wander out of there because of El Nino. We had the steering pattern dragging energy from Pacific over Central America like Idalia. We might not have to worry too much about our Central American gyre this year either. We're going to have to watch for these late bloomers in the tropical MDR, those long track systems, as well as anything that fires up in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. Are we ruling out the possibility of seeing development in the Bay? Absolutely not. No, we can definitely see it. But I do think that our areas that we're going to want to watch and prioritize, if I had to draw a box, are going to be right here. And then if I had to draw a secondary box, we're going to have to watch right in through here. This is going to be a very weird box. But we're going to have to watch this area in particular for formation. This, I do think, is where we're going to have an outbreak of tropical cyclones. This area here is going to be open season for tropical cyclone development. And please take that and interpret it as you choose. But when I say hot spot, I mean our strongest storms are probably going to form in my little pink box here. We could get some very strong storms, and we could likely see some good organized tropical cyclones in my black box here. But in layman's terms, this hurricane season is going to be open season. Last hurricane season, we pumped the brakes and we just kind of hung out outside of Idalia, and we just had fun. I'm even going to roast myself, but we got some subs, we got some likes, we got some viewers, we got some, got some hype, but next year is going to be the real deal. Next year, yeah. I actually have it on my, what is it called? My vision board that I'm going to intercept a major hurricane this year. Because I just know there's going to be an opportunity to do it. And I want to intercept a major hurricane this year, especially if it's coming to Florida. I will put myself in 100+ mile an hour winds. And then nobody out there in the lives, anybody out there in the YouTube sphere is ever going to come at me again and say, nothing happened. Because I'm going to be standing in it. I'm going to be standing in it. I'm going to be earning my subscribers. I'm going to be earning my likes. I'm going to be earning my revenue. That is for dang certain. We're going to be riding it out with everybody. And I do think this year is going to be the year. We're prepping for it and we're gearing up for it. So that's that. Great Lakes will likely see severe weather as we go towards the back end of this year. Once we can switch our Enzo oscillations, Mr. Snow Gaming, once we switch from El Nino to a bit more of a La Nina fashion, we're going to see a lot of that severe weather go from the south up to the north. So yeah, Great Lakes are going to see more winter action, more severe weather action for sure. We just got to get El Nino out of the picture and get our pattern back to normal again. 30% above average. Oh, yeah, Florida man, you had a question. I apologize. What's your thoughts on strong hurricanes in the Tampa Bay area, not just the literal bay, the viewing area? So, that's a tough call. I'm not going to try to claim to be a tropical expert or a tropical meteorologist, whatsoever, but the threat is definitely there. And I believe if you're anywhere on the west coast of Florida to the Panhandle to the Big Bend area, you're going to need to stay on your toes. You're definitely going to have to stay on your toes this year. The Gulf Coast line from Texas all the way through to the Florida Panhandle are going to have to stay on their toes. This right here in August and even September, I think this just tells everything. This is the writing on the wall. We're going to have to watch all the way through to October, and even November, it looks like our tropics are still going to be kind of busy before our La Nina pattern begins to set in. And you can see we're already expecting below average precip for the southeast, a complete reversal of what we were expecting this year because we're going to be in that La Nina pattern. So we'll see. We'll see exactly what this has to offer for us as we go into February because we're going to get a new round for New round of Climo data. We'll get some new CPC predictions. CPC is thinking we're going to be into a weak to moderate La Nina. That's for sure. That is for certain. They are motivated to see this La Nina come to fruition. They're not even thinking neutral anymore. They're thinking more of a weak to moderate at best La Nina for all of 2024, the latter half of 2024. Destiny, welcome in. Trinidad, you're going to have to stay on your toes as well this year. We're going to have a lot of long track storms that are not going to move north. I'm telling you that right now, Destiny, and I can promise you that. And that's not me trying to scare you guys down there, but for Trinidad, Tobago, Barbados especially, anybody in the Lesser Antilles, you know, we had some long track systems that moved north of you guys. That's not going to happen this year, I can already tell you. Especially if we keep pressing into La Nina territory as opposed to just staying in a cool neutral, we're going to see this reinforcing setup. And you can already see it on this model as well. Look at this gigantic void. Gigantic void of a nice Bermuda Azores high just pumping these storms off to the west. And this is July, mind you. This is July that we're looking at. This is not peak hurricane season. This is July. And look at all the above average precip that our model is calling for Louisiana, Mississippi. So we might get a big landfall as early as July. We'll have to wait and see. Our favorability for development is typically confined to the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean at this time as well. So we'll have to keep a close eye out on all this area. There's going to be a lot to watch. Like, I'm already tired just thinking about it, but there's going to be a lot to monitor. And if you think this channel's dead, if I think this channel's dead, wake-up call is coming very soon, and that's why I need to get my schedule put together and fast so I can start putting out the reliable content that people need to see before it's too late. Because God, I can feel the gray hairs already popping up on my hair, on my head and on my face, just thinking about it. Tropical wave moving towards the Lesser Antilles. This is our first Cat 5 of the season. Oh my, I can already see it. So if you've never done it before, I would genuinely appreciate it now. Start sharing the channel. Share this information with everybody, please. Get the channel out there. Let's try to get the algorithm back on our side, and I need to start whipping myself back into shape and getting back in here with you guys and putting out the video content and the coverage. And I'll say it one last time, as early as May 1st, we're going to start our tropical updates, and we're going to start our tropics talk once again. So that'll come back May 1st, that's for sure. And we're going in. This year, we're definitely going to intercept a major hurricane. I can guarantee it. Even if I do have to drive out to Louisiana, Mississippi, and preemptively plan a trip, I am intercepting a major hurricane this year, and I'm going to get blasted. I'm just going to say it right now. I'm going to get blasted, that's for sure. There's no way in hell I'm missing that opportunity in what could possibly be a historic hurricane season. And that's the one time I will genuinely use that terminology, a historic hurricane season. We have all the puzzle pieces coming together for a repeat of 04, 05, 07, 2020. And this time we have the extra flavor, we have the extra salt bay of extremely hot water to tap into. We're going to open up the atmosphere to produce very good tropical cyclones, and we're going to have some very, very, very feverishly hot waters for these things to feed off of. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And I'd be lying to you guys if I said low-key I'm not scared at all. I will definitely admit, when it comes game time, oh, you best believe I'm going to be scared, but I'm going to be excited at the same time. Especially if I have a Hurricane Ian bearing down on my location. Shoot. Yep, but I'm willing to do that for you guys to provide you with the coverage and to help out as I can, because I know, unfortunately, there are instances where people are just not out of harm's way when they need to be. And that's another reason why I want to drive headfirst into these systems, because you just never know who might need your help. And as long as I have connectivity and Wi-Fi, I'm going to continue to blast out live stream and live coverage from wherever it is that this system is making landfall, so I can try to provide you guys with accurate observations and forecast data. Because obviously, like we saw with Hurricane Ian, for example, it's not always going to verify 100%. Even as it was making landfall, Hurricane Center predicted that it was going to stay at this intensity on this track and so on and so forth, and we saw a totally different thing unfold, so that's another reason why we're going to intercept. So yeah, that's how we're going to wrap up the stream. It's going to be a very exciting year, guys. I think we're going to do it. I think we're going to hit 10,000 subs and we're finally going to be that much closer to fully being with you guys in the community full time. So we'll see. We'll definitely see. See, definitely not like 2020. Those are very, very aggressive statements, PM. Not going to lie to you. And truthfully, I'm not a fan. We're so far out where there's no room to say definitely, for sure, guaranteed. There's not enough room for that. 2020 was an average season in terms of what our oceans were doing, and we had a nice La Nina pattern out there, and we had a mess of tropical cyclones. I'm very unfamiliar with 2020. Like I said, I was more focused on COVID with what was happening in the military with deployments, and I'm just slowly getting up to speed on 2020, but I do think this could go toe-to-toe with 2020 for sure. Destiny Ram, thank you very much for tuning in tonight. I do appreciate it. Have a wonderful evening and hope to see you again very soon. I'm just nervous about these hot waters. I'm just very nervous about the hot waters. And even with an Enzo cool to a La Nina pattern edging in there, we're going to open up the realm for some very good atmospheric conditions, especially through August and October. August to October for these storms to just ignite and go off. The only thing we'll have going for us is when they do go off, they'll tap out that ocean heat content and help us out just a little bit. That's like one of our own only protective barriers this year, I believe. We'll have to see. We'll see what shakes out with more Climo model and exactly what the Enzo does for sure. So time will tell. But that's all she wrote, guys. We're going to go ahead and round out the live stream. Thank you very much for those of you who continue to join in for these live chats. I do genuinely appreciate it. We'll talk to you again, hopefully before the weekend. I mean, we'll definitely see you on Friday. We're going to do our Friday night live like we always do. We'll try to hype up some stuff as always because we haven't done that in a little bit. And I know it's all in good fun. We're not actually going to hype anything, but we're just going to hype up the chat, have some fun like we used to do during our Tropics talks. And we'll try to do the same thing again on Friday. And then next week on Friday, we should have our new Climo data. So next Friday will be even more hype so we can look at more tropical info and see exactly what our next month-to-month run looks like for the hurricane season and just get a better feel for it. And we'll see what happens. We'll see what shakes out. February is going to be, I think, a busy month over the United States. That is typically where we see a surge in our tornadic activity as we start to prepare for transition season. And then once we get into transition season, we'll definitely start looking at how the pattern starts to set up for spring, because spring is also going to tell us a lot for the hurricane season during the summer. But alrighty, guys, never stop chasing, brother. I agree. Sam Astapasta, you always rock, Naz. Thank you very much for the kind words. Do you want to throw some predictions out there about how many storms, how many Cat 5s? I do think we're going to see above 20 storms. I do think. So we'll have to see. Time will tell. We'll get a little more into the actual preliminary predictions on the channel as we get through March and April, and then May once we start our Tropics talks again. And I love the sportsmanship. That is awesome. That's a great way to rein the stream in. Rein it in. I love it. That's what it's all about. Twilight Firefly 100, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Have a wonderful evening. We'll talk to you very soon. We will definitely see everybody very soon. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop them in the comments section below. Hit me up on TikTok. Hit me up on my Instagram, my X, wherever you guys see fit, where you have the capabilities of doing so, and I'll always get back to you. And I promise, if not by the end of this week, next week, we'll be fully back to our regularly scheduled programming on here. Maybe not day-to-day updates, but at least every other day with some more consistent content. And I'm going to get back in business full swing once I can get a semester schedule down with school, get a good feel for what the familial life looks like, and we'll just get back in business, full steam ahead, and just continue to grow. That's what we need to do. That's what the goal needs to be right now. Before the hurricane season, we just need to grow. We need to work on growing as fast as we can across all platforms. So that's the name of the game. But thank you all very much for watching. We'll talk to you again very soon. But until next time, Mike, unfortunately, you missed the whole live stream. And I do apologize, but we were just getting ready to hit the outro. So if you wouldn't mind rewatching the stream after I end it, it would be much appreciated. And if not, we'll chat with you again on Friday evening. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, this is Weather Center Nazario signing out.